Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Bordertown Strange. I'm Pam.
And I'm Jess.
Hi, I'm Mark.
There we
tonight
go.
We're going to bring you along for the ride as we delve into the history and the mystery of pet specters and the effects of the supernatural on animals and all the fun that goes along with that. But before we get started, Jess, do you want to take care of a little housekeeping?
Absolutely. All right. So really quick, everybody, for everybody right now that's on Facebook, please just take a second to like and share this video. For everybody that's on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that bell so you know every time we go live. And remember to find us wherever you get your podcasts from. If you want to listen to us in the car, we're available that way too. We encourage everyone to hop on the chats and join the conversation. Stick around until the end for a few rounds of the notebook game too. And we also want to invite everyone to send us your show ideas and your personal stories. We'll read them live on the show or maybe even have you on if you would like. That'll be a hoot and a half. All right, so that's over with. We're going to start something new tonight. I think it's going to be fun. So we're going to start a whole brand new segment called What the Weird. So earlier this week, what, Mark?
I said it sounds delightful.
It is delightful. So we are gonna attribute this new segment to our friends over at Pin Paranormal. Our friend Ashley contacted me earlier this week trying to dig up some information on some paranormal words that she couldn't quite figure out. She was trying to figure out what something was, and I ended up telling her, and she was like, your guys' knowledge is insane. And I was like, no, we're just weird. And she was like, no, it's great.
Well,
but
I don't know. I may actually be insane.
It got me to thinking, we use a lot of words that are not in people's everyday vernacular. Because we're so deep in this. We take these huge deep dives and it's become a part of our normal everyday talk. And we sometimes forget that the average everyday person who may love the paranormal may not know all these special words. So at the beginning of each show, every week that we do this, we're going to give you a brand new what the weird term and give you a little definition so you can grow with us and know what we're talking about sometimes, because we just sometimes forget that not everybody knows that. So I'm going to start out with actually the ones that our friends over at Pin Paranormal asked about. They were asking about something that is thought into being a ghost or something that wasn't originally something that died, but was brought into being because everybody wanted it there or everybody thought it was there. So this is called either a tulpa, a thought form, or an egregore. And I'm going to tell you, there's a little slight difference to each one of them, but they basically mean all the same thing. That's why we're doing all three of them together. So a tulpa is a concept from original Tibetan Buddhism. So it's an old one. It's typically a human form, although it doesn't have to be, that is created by spiritual practice or intense concentration. They have actual practitioners of this, and they are called tulpamancers. Now, tulpas have since then taken on a form of even like a Slenderman type of situation.
That's a good one. That's a big one.
Yes. So a thought form is pretty much the same thing. It's an emanation. Almost couldn't say it. An emanation body or being created from the thought of one person or many. Thought forms have three different classes to them. So there are forms in the shape of a person, forms that resemble objects, and forms that are emotions. So basically on the same level there, they've just kind of broken it up for you so you can kind of, grasp it a little bit better. Also Slenderman. Can you guys think of another tulpa that would fit well there?
I know, I don't remember the year off the top of my head, but there's a thing called the Philip experiment. And this was done when a group of like-minded people got together and had the same thought, let's try to form something. Let's try to create a haunting, basically. So they sat down and they said, okay, we're going to name this spirit Philip. He's going to have been born in, I'm just going to make some of this up. He's going to be born in 1910. His father was a grocer. His mother was a seamstress, and they went into the complete details about this spirit. And this whole group then focused on Philip into this doll, basically, and focused on it coming into being. And then they started working on communicating with Philip, and they started receiving communications back. And it was very exciting because it proved the theory that you can, enough people focus on something and, it can bring it into being. It's just putting energy into something, basically. Prayer is the same thing. You pray, you're putting all that, positive energies into something. So, and something that goes along with this, it's really kind of fun that I'm involved in right now. I'm in the museum. Oh my gosh, I forgot the whole name of it. It's Museum of the Paranormal. It's Greg and Dana Newkirk. And in their group, they actually were in part of the live Halloween event. I think it was on the History Channel, or I don't remember what it was on, where they were all in Salem and they were switching back and forth between teams, and they were like, okay, we're in the Witches Museum. So we've got these people in there trying this experiment. Well, Greg and Dana decided that they were going to try to do something, and theirs worked. But as they were switching back and forth between these teams, this one team had brought a debit box that they had bought off of eBay. And they were going to open it live on the air, and it was going to be this huge, amazing thing. And when they opened it up, there was a block of ramen inside the box. They got skunked, basically, which, in case you ever heard of a debit box, they're all fake. That's been proven. The guy that brought forth the first one, he was like, hey, I made it up. It's not real. But that's another actual example of a tulpa or a thought form, is because people believe in them enough. They do, if they have bought one, sometimes they do have weird things happen around them. It's because of the belief that's gone into it. So what the Newkirks have done, they've done it before, and they just started a new session of it. Haunted Ramen is what it's called. And so they have all the museum members take a block of ramen. So I've got my little block of ramen, and we're building a backstory for him. So that's what I'm doing right now, is working on, I got to name it, and I got to come up with a backstory for it. And then there's a sigil to activate it that we have to put on him. And once we do that, then we're going to start talking about them and seeing, what kind of communication we're getting from them. And the last time they did this, they had great success. So it's kind of fun. I'm excited.
Cool.
Summer long. So we'll see. I'll keep you guys updated on how it goes. It should be fun.
Yeah. I think you should name it Raymond.
Raymond the
Ramen.
Raymond the Ramen. I like it.
I was kind of like, I wanted to be like Bob. If you're a Harry Dresden fan from the Dresden Files, he has Bob the Skull. That is a spirit of intellect. So he helps him in everything that he does. And I'm like, I kind of want a Bob, but I'm kind of scared to name it Bob. What if I think of it too hard as being a Bob and it does everything Bob does? But, yeah, who knows? So I was thinking about Harriet Dresden. I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe.
Make it a female instead of a male. Well, I don't know. I'm still kicking
All
around.
So yeah, those are excellent. Those are excellent examples of tulpas and platforms. So the last one I was speaking of is an egregore. Now, an egregore is pretty much the same too, only this one is highly religion based. Okay, so an egregore, the one for that is the collective mind of a religious community creates a collective entity. These entities can only exist by feeding off the thoughts and the energy of the unified multitude. So that's the actual definition the church gives. That's what an egregore is. So it's basically the same thing. And it's just like Pam said, within prayer. Prayer works whether you believe or not, because so many people are putting purpose into their thoughts. It can really work. The hive mind is a
Yes,
wonderful
yeah,
thing.
it's a good way to put it.
Yes. Just to note, if you do go and look up egregore to learn more about it, there's actually two kinds of egregore. The first one that I just spoke of, the thought form. The second one was actually a choir of angels you'll read about in the book of Enoch. They were called the Watchers. They were also called egregore. Just so you'll know, you're going to run into that too. Oh, hi, Sylvan.
Sylvain's here. Hello.
All right, so that is
Now,
the end of our new segment. What the
before you
weird?
go on, for those that
Yes.
are listening to us instead of watching us on YouTube, Stacy put up, it's kind of like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man on Ghostbusters, formed from someone thinking it to life. Absolutely. You're right.
Yeah. Such a good movie.
It is
All
a good
right,
movie.
so yeah, that's the end of our very first session of What the Weird.
We need to come up with a cool little
have-
graphic for it.
I know
Have to
we
work
need
on
like a
that.
little ditty that brings it in or
Yes,
something.
we do. What the weird? Yeah.
All right, so on with our show, Ghosty Animals. So I think we'll let Pam lead off. We found so much stuff this time. This is going to be a fun trip.
I bet everything I found you guys have.
Oh my gosh, we found so much. We're so excited about it too.
Yeah.
Let's
do this.
Let's see here. Let me start out with this. Just a little ditty here. So, like human ghosts, animal ghosts are very real and they are all around us. This is not based on folklore or myth or anything like that. The reality of these anomalies is based on evidence in the form of spirit photographs, EVPs, and documented sightings. Animal ghosts have been encountered by humans since ancient times. So, what we did, we are very fond of our little slideshows. So, we're going to pull up a slideshow here and start. This is one we kind of talked about the other night when Mark and Jess were at my house. This is a little story I ran across and it kind of tugged at my heart. It's called Angie's Dog Always. This is a true story from Dr. Gain Cannon. He is a physician that had moved to Balsam Grove in North Carolina mountains, and he built a hospital there for all of the mountain folk that didn't have access to good health care. And for those that couldn't get into him, he would jump in his Jeep and he would go to them. And he was never worried if they couldn't pay him because he was building this hospital and he needed things like rock to rock the outer walls and things like that. So he was like, if you can't pay me, bring me a load of rock straight from the stream bed next time you come to town. And so the people had a big investment in this hospital as well. He named it the Albert Schweitzer Memorial Hospital. It's after his mentor that he worked with in Africa. He wanted to bring that similar ministry to the people of Appalachia. So this was during the wintertime, and it had started snowing when a patient had showed up at the doc's cabin and asked if he knew Annie Neal Hughes's daughter, Angie, if he knew that she was ill. The doc did not know about this, and he was like, if they would tell me, I could help her, but So he hurried up with the patient that he had, and he gathered up some medicine, and he jumped in his Jeep. And it wasn't snowing too bad at this time, but he got to the county that they lived in, the Hugheses lived in, and it started snowing pretty heavily. And right as he's heading up the mountain in this one-lane road. And so he was really hugging it to the right because that was where the mountain was. And off to the left, he knew. He couldn't see it because of the snow, but he knew from prior experience that there's like a sheer 700-foot drop right off the edge of that road. So he was really hugging that side. And, the fir trees were covered, and he was concerned he wasn't going to be able to see the pull off to their house. He knew there were like twisted trees that were right out by the road. So he was really trying to keep an eye out for that. And so he's chugging along in this heavy snow, and he hears this really strange sound. So he stops for a second, and he hears it again, and he backs up a little bit, and he rolls his window down, and through the snow, he can see this dog, and it's barking. It's got this really sharp, insistent bark, and he's like, I know that dog. He would know this dog anywhere. because it looks like a cross between a golden retriever and a large coon dog. And he knew for sure it was Angie's dog. So he backed up a little bit more, and the animal kept barking and coming towards him a few paces. And then he would like go off to the side on a trail, going between the trees. So Dr. Gain, he cut the wheel and he headed, he's hoping this dog wasn't chasing a rabbit or something. But gradually he felt the tires of the Jeep settle into the ruts of the road. So he was like, thank goodness. And the dog just kept going, and he would stop and look back. And he stayed about 20 feet ahead of the doctor. And then in a clearing, he saw the dark shape of the little house. And he was like, thank goodness, the dog got me there. That was pretty awesome. So Doc goes up and he knocks on the door, and Mrs. Hughes opens it. And she's like, oh my gosh, how did you get here in this? And he's like, well, it was pretty rough, So he goes in and he checks Angie, and, her eyes are bright. She's burning up. Her face is flushed. She's got pneumonia. And he's like, thank goodness he got there when he did. He gave her a shot, and then he got some pills together to give to Angie's mom. And, Angie sets up a little bit, and she gets up on one elbow, and she's like, did you see him, Doc? And Doc's like, see who? And he's like, did you see Prince? And, Doc's like, I don't know who Prince is. And her mom's like, she means her dog, but it's just the fever talking. So, Doc's like, okay, and she's like, hush, you didn't see Prince, honey. You're just dreaming it. Now just lay down and go to sleep. And she's insistent, but I did see him, Mama. I saw him waving his tail, and as he trotted along, and then he came up to the room over to my bed, and he licked my hand, and he really, truly did. And Doc was like, he's a fine dog. And Angie's mother's like putting her finger to her lips and, telling Doctor, yes, don't talk about it. So when he walks away from Angie, he tells the mother, I think she's going to be okay, but if she takes a turn for the worse, she makes sure you get a hold of me. And he's like, by the way, as far as I'm concerned, that dog's a hero. He should have a medal. I'd already missed the road to your house when I heard him barking, and I backed up, and he led me in to the house. And Annie Neal, which was the mom, she just stared at the doc, and she was like, I don't think so. And Doc's like, what do you mean? And she said, Doc Prince was killed by a car almost a month ago. And he was like killed. And she said, yeah, down by the highway. Angie's father carved him this wooden plank in the shape of a grave rock. And he said it was all foolish, but, Angie was really upset. So he went ahead and did it. And she wrote some words that she wanted on herself. And it was Angie's dog always. So when he leaves, he stops by, and sure enough, there's the grave right there. So I was like, oh, that, yeah. But I was really thrilled with this one because it ends up it is a true story. I found the pictures of Dr. Cannon. He was who he's claimed to be, and this was a really cool story. This is not the only paranormal thing that happened to him either. He said there was times that when he went by, he saw balls of fire rolling down the roof of a home where a man was dying. And then he passed the cemetery, and he saw lights drifting in and out among the headstones. And so this kind of joined in with all the other things that he had seen. So I thought it was cool.
Wow.
Every time you
He's
tell
probably
that story, I get a little weepy, and I keep playing that song Wildfire in my head.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, that Puppers was helping out even after
he
it
is.
passed. Yeah.
Can we do like one more and then switch over to you, Jess?
Sure.
Okay. This next one, there's a lot of dogs, a lot of cats and a lot of dogs, but I know we both found some other types of animals to put in here too.
Oh, yeah.
This particular one, this is Brownie, the town dog of Daytona Beach. And he was a stray, and he lived in the downtown area from 1939 until he died in 1954. And they built him a custom little dog house, and you can see it in that newspaper article where he lived. And he had a bank account at the local bank, and he dined on steak and ice cream all the time. He didn't have an owner, but the entire city just absolutely loved him and took care of him. And he was really well known. And when he passed, it was a big to do in town, and they had enough money in his bank account where they could make him a coffin, and they had enough to make him a headstone too. And there was a lady, her name's Dusty Smith, and she's from Daytona Beach, and she decided to sit down next. There's a bench really close to his grave, so she decided to sit down next to it and kind of talk to him because she thought it was sad that he'd been gone for so long, and worried that people might forget him, and if he's forgotten, he would cease to be, kind of thing. So she was like, hey, Brownie, I'm here to talk to you. I just want to let you know you're still the bestest boy ever. And, we love you and we haven't forgotten you. And she said when she did that, she felt like this warm pressure come up and push on her lower leg. And she was like, is it something or isn't it? It's hard to tell sometimes. So she had stood up and she snapped a picture where she'd been sitting and where she thought maybe Brownie, where she had felt him. And she was using a digital camera. This was back in like 2010. And when she looked through the LCD screen, she noticed there's a pretty bright orb in there, orbs, whatever. Some people feel, sometimes I think there's something, and a lot of times I think they're nothing. But so she goes home and she pulls this photo up on her computer, and she realized she saw a face in it. And she thought it looked like Brownie and that Brownie was still busy doing his job. So here's a actual known picture of Brownie. And this is the orb that she took. And it's going to take a little bit, maybe a lot of imagination to see the ears off to the sides and things. But
yeah, like
yeah,
vaguely, if you really try.
if you kind of squint your eye, maybe.
Yeah.
It's a great thought, though, that he's still there. I wanted to put it in here because she believed that this is what this was. So who am I to say any different? We'll bring it to everybody so they can see it.
There we go.
Yay.
I mean, I can vaguely see where she might have gotten that from. Like the darker spots kind of like look like an ear
inside of
and
his
an
ears.
eye.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I can maybe see a nose. That's about
More than
all.
likely, it's pareidolia, which that's another what the weird word is, pareidolia.
Yes,
That'd
we can do that one sometime too.
Yeah.
Put it on the list.
Yes.
But yeah.
Oh, there is a long list.
So, do we want to switch over to you for a few, Jess? We'll
sure.
Just go back and forth.
Yeah.
Let me pull mine down. You want me to go ahead and put yours up?
Yeah, go ahead and put mine up.
All right.
Now, I do want to say this. So, like, Mark volunteered to come on here and help us tonight. But we didn't, like, really all get together to, like, pick and choose what we would do. So I know that Mark just has a little lineup that he's kind of found. So if I or Pam start talking about one that you've looked up to, let us know. And then you can certainly hop in there and, like, do that one.
And please jump in because we have a bad habit of just rattling sometimes because we get excited.
Yeah, we
don't want to be boring.
Yeah,
I am.
In fact, actually, do you want to do one that you have, Mark?
I'll do one next.
Okay.
After you do a couple.
All right. So I'm going to start off with a cute one that I found. Super cute. It warms my heart too. So this one is about a little boxer named Preston, a little dog, right? This is in Nashville, Tennessee, in the Belmont Hillsboro neighborhood. You can kind of see that little sign up there. It's right here in this little neighborhood where this went down at. So one Halloween, not that long ago, this little boxer named Preston, he was quite fond of following the neighborhood kids around. And it was Halloween night. So, of course, all the kids were out. And he was having a great time following them around while they were trick-or-treating and getting their bags of candy. And unfortunately, one of the children tripped and fell and spilled their candy in the middle of the road.
Oh, no.
And turned around and was hurriedly trying to pick it up and did not see the car that was speeding pell-mell at them. But little Preston did. And Preston actually ran and knocked this kid out of the way. And the kid made it, but Preston didn't. Unfortunately,
Oh,
he got hit straight on. Right? He was a beloved neighborhood pet too. Everybody mourned for him, and he was buried and long gone. But a few weeks afterwards, the kids started reporting some weird activity in the street in that area. And now the kids and even the adults know not to go too near the edge of the sidewalk, because if you do, you get bumped and you get wet noses on your hands at your side,
that's awesome.
because and they're sure it's little Preston trying to keep you from being in the street. And apparently he is out in full force every Halloween protecting his kiddos.
I love that.
Nice.
Yeah,
That is
isn't that
awesome.
great?
Yes. He's the bestest boy too.
He is. So if you move to the next one, we're going to do a famous one. So this is the very, very famous Greyfriars Bobby. And if you are a fan of the History Channel or the Travel Channel at Halloween time, you most certainly probably have heard the story. But it's a great one. It's also very sad. So this is in Edinburgh, Scotland. This is a little terrier here that you're looking at. He even has his own statue. He's so famous. So Bobby was the beloved pet of a night watchman who died of tuberculosis, unfortunately, in 1858. This has been a while ago. So little Bobby here refused to separate from his owner. He even stayed by the side of the casket while the funeral procession was going on to the cemetery. And then he stayed at the cemetery right by his owner's grave for days, until finally the gentleman who took care of the cemetery literally went and physically got him and took him home with him. But every day he would follow him back to the cemetery where he worked, and he would stay at his master's side. So he ended up doing this for 14 years, is how long this dog stayed there.
Very
The same
loyal.
pattern every day. Yeah. He would stay there all day until it was time for the cemetery sexton to go home. He would go home with them and then come right back again in the morning. And this happened for 14 years. He stayed there until 1872, when he finally passed. And he was buried right beside him. So he now supposedly roams the rows, and he still sits at his master's grave, only in ghost form now.
How sweet.
Aw.
I love this
Yeah.
statue because you can see everybody rubs his nose. It's nice and shiny.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, that's Greyfriars Bobby.
That's a
Yay.
pretty
You can go
famous
visit
one.
him.
I've actually got it on like 4 different lists.
Do you?
Yeah, he's pretty
Awesome.
famous. You got one, Mark?
Sure. What do you guys think about monkeys? Monkeys.
Yes.
Monkeys are good.
Monkeys are good.
This
Ghost
one
monkeys
is
are a little scary.
the ghost monkey of Carew Castle. It's probably one you've got. I don't know if you've got pictures of it or not.
I don't have that one.
No.
Well, in 17th century, Carew Castle, which is in Pembroke, home of Sir Roland Rees. He was quite a traveler, and he rescued this injured ape off of a Spanish galleon. And he said he was able to train the monkey to follow commands until one day, a rather annoying merchant approached his home, and to get rid of them, he sicked the monkey on them.
Oh no.
Yeah, the monkey attacks the merchant, so
Oh.
it manages to drive him off. The merchant, as he leaves, curses Sir Roland and said monkey. And the next day, Sir Roland is found quite dead. So they never found the monkey, but to this day, on stormy nights around the castle, the mad monkey is sighted.
me see if I can share my screen. I think I found a picture of it. We'll see if it
The
works.
mad monkey. I wonder
I
what he
liked
did. Did he
that
like
one.
That
did he
is a
throw
good one.
bananas at him or
I don't know how he did it. Sir Roland was found in a pool of blood. So, yep.
Ooh. Wow.
There it is.
So,
Pretty
Cool.
wild. That's a good one. I like that one.
Congratulations on your monkey story.
That's a good monkey
well, I
story.
mean, if
It
you look
is.
like one, you might as well talk about them.
Do you have another one, or do you want us to switch around?
Well, I mean, let's switch around a little bit. I've got a few. I know you
Okay.
guys have done a lot of research, probably a lot more than me. I only spent a couple hours at this, so a couple
Chris
hours
said,
was enough stuff to find an overwhelming amount of
yeah. Chris
stuff.
said, "Can we get a monkey to deal with the neighbor?"
Uh-oh.
You know, that's not a bad idea, my dear.
That's awesome. For those that don't know, Chris is Mark's wife.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to switch over to this one. This goes along with a story called The Hounds of Marywood. And this gentleman here, his name is Angus Gillespie, and he's a folklorist. And I can't remember. Oh no, I forgot which college he was with. I don't have it down here. But he taught a lot of classes. I think he retired in 2002, if I remember correctly. But before, and I'm not sure what year it was, but this is a while before 2002. This was probably in the 70s, I think. But Angus and his family, at the time, they were living in Connecticut, but they were wanting to move to a more rural setting. And he found a house called Marywood that was in Virginia. So he drove up to the realtor to go and view it. And this was a 12-room estate. It had substantial acreage. And Angus was a little suspicious of it because the price was really low on the home. So his first question to the realtor is, "It's haunted, isn't it?" And the realtor was like, "No, no, it's not haunted at all." And he was like, "Okay,
Oh
okay."
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the first sign.
So they travel down the stretch of road, and this road is filled with shadows, and it's gloomy. It's under this canopy of intertwined trees. And, Angus is looking. It's getting towards dark, and Angus is looking out the passenger side of the car, and he notices, like less than 2 feet away and keeping pace with them, was these two beautiful white Afghan hounds, and they were loping alongside the car, and they were followed by a man that had a brown felt hat and a safari coat on, but his skin was like a startling shade of pale, and he had a thin aquiline nose. And so Angus is like, "Who the devil is that?" And the realtor's like, not looking, and he's like, "Who? I don't see anyone." And so Angus is like, "What do you mean? Just look." And he's like, "I'm trying to watch the road. I don't want to miss a curve or anything." And he said the realtor's face was really, scared, and he was shaky. And so Angus is looking, and these apparitions are not going away. They're keeping pace with them. And he is so sure that they are real because he looked at them long enough. He started doing a little test. He like closed one eye and then looked and saw him. So he closed the other eye and still saw him. So by the time they reached the gate to the house and pulled up, he turned toward the realtor again to say something. "Are we there?" And he turned back, and they were gone. So he's like, "Okay, I guess, yeah, I'm spooked now, but we're here. So I'm going to go ahead and go in the house." He walks in, and he absolutely falls in love with this place. Of course, it's the, quintessential ghost story. And so absolutely loves it. And when they're driving away, he turns to the realtor again and says, "Not really. Are you sure this house is haunted?" And the realtor's like, "No, no, no, it's not." He's like, "Okay, who was the last tenant?" "Well, the last tenant was a Mr. Eugene Tripp." And he's like, "Well, how long was he there? Why did he leave?" And he's like, "I don't know. He was there about 3 years. I have no idea why he left." And he's like, "Well, do you know how to contact him?" And he's like, "No, he left over 2 years ago now. So I have no idea how to get a hold of him." So he's like, "Okay." So he gets back to the realtor's office, and he calls his wife, And he's like, I really want this house. And she's like, I trust your judgment. If you really want this house, let's go for it. So he makes this snap decision. Okay, we want it. We're buying it. And so they do. And they move almost immediately. And within 2 months of living in the house, their 8-year-old daughter, Jenny, she sees her father walking up the lane with these 2 large white dogs, and she's excited. Oh my gosh, Dad got these cool dogs for me. So she goes running out to meet him, and she pulls up short when she realizes that isn't her dad. And this is a stranger, and he's got this ashen face and these enormous eyes that are glittering, just scary looking. She faints. And so her dad sees her fall, and he runs out, and he's like, shaking her awake. And when she wakes up, she's like, telling him, I saw this man and with these dogs, I thought it was you. And so the dad's like, oh crap, somebody else is seeing him now too. But he's like, oh honey, it's probably just a tramp or something, I'm sure he won't come back. And so like a week goes by, and their housekeeper quits, and she's like, I can put up with mice and beetles, but not the ghosts. And he's like, what do you mean? And she said, well, I was in the kitchen, I heard a noise at the door, and I turned towards it, and pressed up against the glass, looking in at me was this face. And it wasn't the boss's face. It was not the face of anyone living. It was the face of a corpse. It was horrid. It was white. It had this scary mouth and glassy eyes. And whoever this was, they had to have died a terrible death. And on either side of him, standing on their hind legs, leaned against the glass, were these 2 big white dogs. And she's like, I don't know what happened to them, but they're dead too. Bad dead is what she said. They're bad dead. And I don't know who did them in, but they stared at me for like a full minute, and it seemed like forever. And then they just vanished while I was looking at them. My heart isn't strong, and if I see him again, it'll kill me. So I'm out of here. And so Diane was Angus's wife, and she's like, it sounded a lot like what their daughter had seen. And Angus had no choice but be okay, fine. I actually saw these things the very first time I looked at the property. And she's like, are you serious? And you didn't say anything. And he's like, yeah, I'm realizing now that wasn't the best move. And she's like, well, you better fix this or we're going to have to move. And he's like, crap. So he goes into town the next day, and he starts asking around, and he talks to the banker, and he asks about this Mr. Eugene Tripp. And the banker did remember him. He said he came to town just a few times, but he was always in the company of his landlord. And he's like, do you mean my realtor, Mr. Croft? And he's like, yeah, that's him. And he said he was there in town about 3 years, and then he just was suddenly gone, and nobody ever saw him again. And there was a newspaper delivery boy that said he did pass the pair in Croft's car late one afternoon, and they were screaming at each other, and like they were having this violent argument. And then sometime later, the newspaper boy overtook the car when he was coming back on his route. And the car was parked along that part of the road where the trees overhead were the thickest, and it was dark and gloomy. And Croft was just getting in on the driver's side, and he didn't see Mr. Tripp anywhere. And that was actually him seeing them that first time when they were arguing was the last time anybody saw Mr. Tripp. So the newspaper boy was like, hey, I think Mr. Croft may have had something to do with this, And Croft laughed at him, and he was like, oh, that's a huge lie. And he was like, I was in another part of the state looking at this property. I didn't get home till midnight. So, he maintained all that he knew was that Tripp had expressed his intention of leaving before his lease was up. And so when he did just leave town, like Mr. Croft said he did, he just claimed the furniture in lieu of the owed rent. And that was the end of it. For whatever reason, nobody looked any further into this. And so the banker was like, he's like, was that it? And the banker's like, yeah, but within a few weeks, there was rumors that Tripp's ghosts had been seen in the place where you're saying that you saw it on the road. And a bunch of people have seen it, including myself. And he's like, well, did Mr. Tripp have any dogs? And he's like, yeah, he had 2 beautiful Afghan hounds. They were white, and he loved those dogs, And for some reason, he loved him so much that it really pissed Croft off, and everybody noticed how mad it would make Croft. And it was something that the town talked about. So the next afternoon, Angus goes home. He tells his wife this. And so the next afternoon, Angus and his wife and their daughter, they go to the place in the road where the ghost appeared, which is where the last place this car was
Mhm.
seen. And standing off in the trees, staring at them, was this slight, you know, really pale figure of a young man. And he was dressed in an expensive walking outfit, and beside him were the Afghan hounds. And so Angus and his wife were like, we need to say something and we can't. But their daughter was like, she didn't care. She's like, who are you? And so she starts walking up to the figure and she's like, tell me your name. And the man didn't reply, but he turned around and he walked over to this huge oak tree. And then he pointed at the oak and then he just like melted into the ground. And so the Gillespies, they walk up to the tree and they're looking at it and they realize on the back of it, it's hollowed out. And when Angus dug down in there, there were three skeletons inside of that tree. And
Yeah.
there was a human being and two dogs. So they contact the police and they tell them the story of what happened. And they point out this tree, so the police get to it and they're like, yeah, this is a human skeleton and these are, dogs. So they pull everything out. There's still fragments of clothing that are clinging to the remains. But according to the medical examiner's report, it was the skeleton of a young woman. And the cause of death was pretty obvious. The skull had received a violent blow, undoubtedly caused the death. And so Gillespie's like, hey, my very first visit to the house, this is what I saw. This is the reason we came to this tree, is because it's where it first appeared. And then he tells him about Croft's peculiar behavior, not wanting to look. No, I didn't see anything. I don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. So the police go to Ronald Croft and he's arrested on suspicion of murder. And he confesses. And in his confession, he's like, Mr. Tripp was not a man. That was actually my wife. And she was so beautiful. I was so afraid of losing her to another man that he forced her to dress as a man and to stay away from town unless he was with her. And so the next morning, when the guard brought breakfast to Croft, they found him hanging by his belt from the roof of his cell. He killed himself. But he did leave a brief note, and it said, she was my wife. I loved her. She became a dog worshiper, loving those dogs more than me, and I couldn't bear it. So I killed her and her dogs. And so,
Yeah.
sad and ugly story. But
That's crazy.
once they found that, he disappeared. She disappeared. They never saw the ghost again. It's like she's vindicated, and that happens a lot. You hear that once their death is figured out or justice is made.
business.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So Angus goes and now he buys his daughter 2 Afghan hounds because she loved him so much, and they ended up living there for years and years. So I thought that was a
Wow.
really wild story. Kind of a long-winded one, but it was so interesting.
Wow.
That was a good one. That really
That was
was.
a good one. And this is Angus Gillespie right here in the picture.
Yeah, and I hate to say this because I'm sure he looks like he might be Emperor Palpatine's brother.
Maybe a little. I can see
it. He's very friendly looking though. He's the good brother.
Yes, he does have a very friendly face. Too funny.
Cool.
Sorry. That's inappropriate. I apologize to the man if he ever watches this show.
Oh, he'll appreciate the shout out, I'm sure.
I'm an idiot. So.
No, you're not. I'll do one more and then I'll send it over to Jess.
Okay.
So this one, if you're a fan of the paranormal, you more than likely know what this house is. You more than likely have heard of the Amityville Horror. It's the story of the Lutz family. They moved into the infamous DeFeo murder house, which was in Amityville, New York at 112 Ocean Avenue in the 70s, which they actually changed the address of the house to 108. So if you go looking for it today, you can't find it at 112. It's at 108 Ocean Avenue.
You won't recognize it either.
No,
they changed the fascia on it too.
Yeah, and they took out those little half round windows and stuff.
Yep.
They lasted a whole 28 days, at which time they fled and they left nearly all of their belongings and furniture behind. And according to the Lutz family, there was a myriad of paranormal phenomena that occurred. Jay Anson came along and he bought the rights from them to write the book, The Amityville Horror. And one of the most incredible parts of his story was his claim that the Lutz's daughter, Missy, had befriended an invisible red-eyed pig named Jody. And Jody could not be seen by anyone unless it wanted to be. And at times it was a little bigger than a teddy bear, and at other times it was bigger than the house, is what George Lutz claimed. So one night when he was coming back from the boathouse, George witnessed Jody standing behind his stepdaughter in her bedroom when he looked in the window, and scared him to pieces. And then his wife, Kathy, the way that she was introduced to Jody was pretty disturbing too, because if you've seen the movie, there's this iconic scene where Missy's sitting there singing, "Yes, Jesus Loves Me." And Kathy walks in and she's like, "Who are you singing to?" And she's like, "Mom, you scared Jody. She just went out the window." And Kathy's like, "What are you talking about?" Because she knew Missy had this invisible friend. So she pulls back the curtain, and that's the picture that's next to. She sees this red pig-eyed creature staring back at her. And she flips her lid. I would too. And after that, I mean, George, he notices hoof prints in the snow. So there's all these things that are kind of lending to the fact that this could be a real occurrence for them. And Kathy, she starts to feel something that embraces her, and she smells the smell of perfume in the house. They all do, along with this putrid smell that comes up sometimes too. And Kathy kept having this creepy feeling like something was trying to communicate with her. And about the same time that Jody came to be is also when the green ooze starts coming out of the walls and things like that. So what exactly was Jody? If you believe the Lutzes, they think she's some kind of, I say she loosely, that Jody was a demon. But there is so much speculation that this part of the story was made up, and speculation that the entire story was made up.
Yeah. I was gonna say that we should probably put it out there to take the story with a grain of salt, because
Yes.
not that too long ago, the Lutzes were brought into court over this entire situation because their attorney from that time was actually suing them
Yeah.
because, according to him, Anson and the Lutzes and the attorney got together and actually wrote this
Over a bottle of
story out
wine.
one night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they could all get a little bit of cash. They thought, man, this would be a fantastic story to spin. And if we spin it right, we can make a lot of dough. And so it's just been a lot of like naysay and throwing insults,
There's
and this
back and
never
forth.
happened.
Yeah.
And then the Warrens got involved, and we all know, the
Hollywood.
kind of going on with the Warrens. So
Take
just
everything
take it with a grain of salt. Yeah.
Yes.
Although, if you just want a really good thriller to read, it's a good thriller if you
It
want
is.
to
It's a
scare
good book.
yourself. So whether it's
It is a good
true
book.
or not, it's a good story.
The original movie, I think came out when did it come out? The early 80s, maybe? Late 70s, early 80s?
Late 70s.
Late
James
70s.
Brolin.
Yeah.
Might have been like 78. James Brolin was in it. Was it Margot?
I'm less scared of this than the shark.
You're less scared of this than what?
The shark. That was also Amityville.
They did an Amityville in space where the house shoots into the stratosphere. And
I did not see that one. I did watch Amityville 3D.
I saw the one that Ryan Reynolds did. It was terrible.
It was awful.
Don't watch it. Don't.
The original was way better than that one, for sure.
All right. Hey, what do you guys think about talking mongooses?
Oh, nice.
Ooh, a talking mongoose. Go for it.
So, this is Jeff, the talking mongoose.
Ooh.
Now, according to legend, Jeff was said to be super clever, and he haunts this farmhouse of the Irving family on the Isle of Man, and apparently he comes out and speaks. I don't know what he says, but apparently he's quite clever. It's considered a bit of a hoax. Nobody really believes it, but then a lot of people really do. So he's been spotted in this farmhouse, and comes out for a chat from time to time.
Cool.
That's awesome.
I wish I knew what he said.
You know, in the books I read, that sounds like a familiar.
It does.
It does.
It does.
Yeah.
So that's what struck me. And this was in the early 30s. So you know how the press was at that point in time. Oh, let's write something good for the paper. See if we can get a bunch of people to buy the paper. So it could be that, but I
can't imagine they made that up. It has to be absolutely true.
I read a lot of fantasy novels, and when I was reading these stories, this one struck me as interesting because, you know, the wizard always has his familiar. And
Yes.
Honestly, if you were going to write a book, a talking mongoose would be freaking fantastic.
I'm trying to, the websites I'm hitting are not pulling it up, but I found a cool t-shirt. I did it for devilment. Yep. I love it. I did it for the devilment.
So
that's awesome.
Oh my goodness. All right. Okay.
It was a fun one.
It is.
It's a good one.
But so I'm gonna up the ante here, Mark. I'm gonna put down your monkey. And we're gonna go with a ghost chicken.
I'm gonna raise you a ghost chicken.
It's ghost chicken time. Woo-hoo. All right. So I had to include this one because it made me laugh so hard when I found it. So this that you're seeing, this picture, is actually from an original piece that was in a London newspaper. Okay. Oh my gosh. Here we go. So this happened. This is the ghost chicken of Pond Square in Highgate, London. Okay. At the big park there. So famous statesman and philosopher Francis Bacon, who everyone's heard of, he played with stuff. He was an inventor, right? He was always coming up with new stuff. And he had this idea one day that perhaps you could use snow to preserve meat in some way, right? Not to keep meat like for a short amount of time, but to actually preserve it in some way. So he decided to go about his little thing here, and he found himself his scientific method. He went and found himself a live chicken. He killed it. He plucked it. He gutted it, and then he stuffed that sucker full of snow. And a few days later, unfortunately, he didn't get to see the end of his experiment because he actually died of pneumonia from having been messing around in the snow. Right? That's how.
Damn it, man.
Bad thing.
That's how Francis Bacon died. He died of pneumonia, right? And didn't get to see the end of his little experiment here.
That's a crying shame.
It's sad.
It is sad.
However, it wasn't actually Bacon's ghost that ended up coming back after his death. It was the chickens. The chicken on revenge, apparently. Dun, dun, so, dun. Yes, it became the well-known Highgate ghost of the chicken. So where Bacon's little, like his house or his lab or whatever it was where he was doing this at, is where the Highgate is now. And it's actually a pond area with it's like a little park area with little places to sit around it and stuff. And apparently this ghost chicken does speedy laps around the pond. It likes to run around the pond. And if you try to catch it or if you get too near it, it disappears. And I thought that this was probably like kind of like the mongoose story, like somebody just kind of made it up for the paper so they would get some more readers. But it's actually very well documented throughout the years. Even the gentlemen who guarded Highgate, who were kind of like the keepers of the park, they detested the ghost and they wrote about it all the time in their logs. You know, saw the damn chicken today, couldn't catch it, it disappeared again.
That is right. Awesome.
Yes, it's very well known. So this ghost chicken still to this day apparently haunts the Highgate Park.
I love it. That's a good
Sweet. It should haunt a McDonald's.
one. For the chicken nuggets.
Yeah. I'm just glad it's like in full form. Could you imagine seeing like a chicken, no
Its head
head,
cut off. Yeah.
with some stuff with
No
snow?
feathers.
All right.
Full
So
of snow.
this now that you bring this up, I'm probably going to have nightmares tonight. I don't know how many people of you know, but I grew up on a farm. And many summers, I remember having to kill and clean up to 100 pullets at a time.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
just speaking about it makes that smell come back into my nose.
Oh, that's not a good smell.
And so let's not talk about running headless chickens, because
Had
I
enough of
was
that in your life.
traumatized as a young man, and it just it
Yes.
doesn't thrill me.
That's
I've
fun.
had to do that too. It's quite the smell.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So this next place that you're looking at here, and for people
I know what
listening,
this one is.
we're looking at an old like Tudor home type of place. This
Athelhampton.
is in Athelhampton. This is the story of the ghost ape. Now, this is kind of a sad story, but at the same time, it's just so freaking weird. You just can't get over it. So
Those
this
are the
is in
best ones.
Dorset. This is in Dorset, England. This home is haunted by 6 humans and 1 ape. So this was owned at the time by the Martin family, and they owned an ape that was actually considered a pet and was favored by one of the daughters. They kind of attached and were inseparable. The daughter was not in the best health, suffered from depression, and ended up unaliving herself, let's say.
Oh.
Locked up in one of the further rooms in the house that they didn't actually use. It was in a wing that they just didn't use very often. The place was huge. And unfortunately for the ape went with her. She locked the door, chucked the key, and offed herself. And the story goes is that the ape actually passed before they ever found her because it couldn't get out to eat or drink.
Oh, wow.
No one they assumed that maybe she had ran away because she wasn't in her room or anything. No one thought to go and look at this empty section of the castle or the home.
What wasn't it? A secret room behind a panel that
I was
nobody
going
ever
to say.
they knew about it but never
Really?
checked it.
That was a secondary story.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a few ways that happens. How she ended up locked up with this ape. Regardless, the ape gets locked up with her, and passes for no food or drink, right? Or if the story is true, it might have passed simply because its owner had just died. Animals
Mourned
go through
itself to
depression
death.
too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? So the things that happen now is that you can hear scratching and ape sounds on the other side of that wall as if it's trying to escape. And it's also seen running around corners and stuff inside of the home. People will just be like walking through and see it run around the corner out of the side of their eye.
Well, that could be residual, because I'm sure he ran around the house like a monkey.
Yeah. But yeah, so 6 other people passed in this house, either from illness, old age, or also unaliving themselves. It's got quite the history. But it also includes an ape.
Sounds like a delightful place.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd spend the night. Let's go.
No,
No,
I'd pass on that one, I think.
I think it'd be
Interesting,
cool.
though.
The
That's a
the ape might follow me home and be my new best friend.
Ugh, No, I'll pass on
No.
that one.
No
Okay.
fun.
Right?
I want a
no fun with
ghost
that
monkey.
one. Okay, I'm going to switch over. This is an exciting slide, isn't it? This is actually goes along with a story called Twister's Farewell. So there's a young girl, and his name was something else. I can't remember what it was. It's like Bruiser or something. And he actually warned his young mistress of a tornado, and she was at school, and he didn't want her to go, and they left him tied up in the backyard, and he got sucked up in the twister.
Aw.
And they found him
Hmm.
a few blocks away from where their house was. Their house was halfway destroyed, but they found him, so they named him Twister from then on. And he had this look in his eye that day that she saw his mistress saw this next day, and not the day after, but years later. And she was like, oh, this can't be good, but she was like, I'm going to keep him with me just in case it's something that's going to happen to him. And she is going to rollerblade to the local park and hang out with her friends. So she takes Twister with her. And when she gets to the end of where her cul-de-sac is, she's crossing the road, and she is hit by a drunk driver, and she's got Twister
Aw.
in her arms. And so he's hit as well. And so she's like, somebody please check on my dog, because she lost track of him. She dropped him. And she ends up in the hospital. She's got both of her arms broken, her legs are tore up really bad, um, and her face is all contused. And so the first thing she asks when she wakes up, because she was semi-comatose when they brought her in, first thing she asks when she wakes up is, how's Twister? And her mom's like, he's fine, he's fine. You just focus on you getting better. And what they didn't tell her was that he was gravely injured as well. And so her mom's like, they're so happy that she has woken up, but she's like, you need to get some rest. Go ahead and go to sleep. We'll be here in the morning. And so she does. Well, she wakes up uh, in the middle of the night, and she looks at the clock on the wall, and it's 4:08 a.m. And she's waking up, and she's like, I hear a dog. What am I hearing? And so she looks towards the floor, and her little dog's sitting there, Twister's sitting there. And he's got his toy, which is what I put up here. And I can't remember what they called it. It's some kind of loop-de-loop toy or something. So she's like, oh my gosh, Twister, I can't believe you made your way clear in the hospital to see me. You're such a good boy, and she's like trying to get him to jump on the bed. Well, a nurse, she's in ICU, so a nurse hears her, and she comes into the room, and she's like, who are you talking to? And she's like, my dog made it in here. And she's like, oh honey, there's we would have seen him if he would have come in here. She's like, no, he was just right here. He's got to be under the bed or something. So the nurse looks around, and she's like, I think maybe you were dreaming, or you were hoping he would be here with you or something. So why don't you go back to sleep, and you'll be fine. And so she does. She goes ahead, and she lays back down, and her parents come in the morning. And so the first thing, she's like, hey, Twister showed up. I can't believe it. And her mom's like, oh honey, I'm so sorry we have to tell you this. Twister passed away last night in the middle of the night from his injuries. And she was like, just heartbroken. And she was like, what time? And so her mom's like, well, they marked it at 4:08 a.m. from the vet. And she's like, that's the time that I saw Twister in my room, because I was looking at the clock. And so, she's upset, and she's like, I'm sure he was here. I'm sure he was here. And her dad pulls out the chair to go ahead and sit down, and Twister's loop-de-loop toy, his rope toy, was under the chair. So
Oh,
I was like, aw,
sad.
sad but sweet. He got to come see her
cry a
before
little.
he left. I know.
This
I
is not a
know.
good subject for me.
Okay, this is a better one. This one's kind of better. This is Walter the Mule. Will that help?
Woo! A
Hey,
mule.
everybody likes a jackass.
Right? This is Walter the Mule, and he was the pet of this really odd old lady named Miss Wilson. And they knew Walter in town mostly because he smelled really, really bad, and you could smell him from blocks away. And Miss Wilson wasn't much better, honestly. But what was fun about Walter was he wore a bonnet, and he was Miss Wilson's only friend.
Is
So
this
she
an
talked
actual
to him.
picture?
Huh? No, I had
No.
to AI this one because I didn't have one.
I was going to say,
Um,
because they both look a little ornery, and I kind of like it.
Right? They're cute as all get out. I couldn't find one. I looked everywhere for one, and I couldn't find a picture to go with this one. But she talked to Walter all the time while she was walking around, and he would always look at her like he understood every word she was saying. And so it was a summer day, and Walter was really old, and he passed away, and so poor Miss Wilson, she was left all by herself, and the only person that she really had any interaction with was the newspaper boy. The newspaper boy's name was Jamal. And so he came by and he was dropping the paper off, and he noticed this pile of clothing laying out beside the house. And he was like, he looked again because he swore he saw, and not only did he see, he smelled Walter, the mule, standing right there by the pile of clothes. So he's like, what the heck? So he goes and checks just to make sure, it's not Miss Wilson. And it was. She had fallen in the yard. So he's like, kind of shaking her, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? And he realizes that Walter's moved. So he turns to look at Walter, and Walter's like walking towards the road. And Walter kind of looks back at him and disappears. And he's like, okay, I did not just see that. So, but Miss Wilson's waking up. So he gets her up, he takes her in the house, and he gets her a drink, and makes sure she's okay. And what had happened was she wasn't taking care of herself after she lost her friend, and so Jamal's like, he got the doctor called. Doctor came, made sure she was okay. And so Jamal started visiting her, and he became her friend. So Walter passed away, but when he did, he sure made sure that Miss Wilson had a new friend. So that one was kind
Aw.
of sweet, I thought.
Aw.
Yeah, that was a sweet one.
Aw.
That was. I like that one. That was.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
All right. What do you think there, Mark? Do you got one?
Well, I mean, I don't have a real good one. I mean, I
Do you have
got
an upbeat
plenty.
one after my Debbie Downers?
Well, let's try the Los Angeles Zoo. Okay, it's not
Ooh.
necessarily just one critter.
Oh, I
The
got
old
a lot of information on this one.
LA's. Well, you wanna hit that one?
Enzo,
Hey,
yay!
Kenzo.
Enzo, my friend.
He said, my hotel room is so cold, my chicken sandwich has snow in it. Ew!
That is
Oh no.
amazing, Enzo. That's I love it.
Well, let's do this one together. So you started off, Mark, and then I'll fill in anything that you don't have.
There you go.
Well, Ivan the Terrible, a 900-pound polar bear. Nickname for his bad temper, and it brought about a lot of poor treatment from the keepers because the old Los Angeles Zoo was actually rather infamous for its poor treatment of the critters. And so he killed two of his uh, co-bears over a female,
Uh-oh.
and he mauled his mate of 11 years as well. And he just was not very friendly. And so he is supposedly seen there.
Mm-hmm.
A baby zebra uh, broke its neck, and so did a bear. There was lots of cats that passed away, and just
Mm-hmm.
a lot of stuff there, and just so much mistreatment of there. And I guess if you go out there, you'll hear the critters,
Yeah.
and sometimes see them walking around their tiny little uh suboptimal cages that they had set up for them. It really was kind of a miserable place. It probably was a good thing they closed it. Now it's
Yeah.
just a
So,
movie set. So
well, and it's also a park. So, to give you some back history, so this place was actually cursed, supposedly,
really, well,
right?
I mean, with
Before it
all the
was
bad
ever a
treatment,
zoo. So this is so the old Los Angeles Zoo, or the Griffith Park Zoo, was also its name. The zoo itself lasted from the 1930s into the 1950s. It wasn't around for very long, which is very apropos because nobody lasted very long on these grounds. So the zoo was closed to build the bigger one, which is now, it's only a few miles away from the spot and is still open to this day. But the old zoo was closed. And it's now a park with picnic areas. But of course, was, as Mark said, a very bad reputation around it for the mistreatment of animals and the very many bad things that have happened there. And like he said, there's reports of all these creepy animal ghosts that wander the cages and outside of the cage area still. You can hear creepy animal screeches and calls and moans, even though there's no animals there anymore. They also talk about these, like Mark said, these sudden, like loud outbursts, like a cacophony of zoo animals just screeching and yelling all at the same time, just scaring everybody out of their minds at the park at night.
They're across the veil going, "Oh, here's somebody!" Yeah. And then you're all like,
basically. But the land supposedly has a curse on it. So I went and I did the history on that because, you know, me, I love curses, you know. What is the history on this? So the curse originated, the land was owned by a rancher named Don Antonio Feliz. He died of smallpox in 1863. And it was found that a local politician and the family's attorney had colluded together to fix Antonio's will to cheat the family out of the land that park now sits on, right?
Oh, well, that's nasty.
Yeah. So Antonio's niece turned around and placed a curse on the land, declaring death and bad luck to all owners of the land that were not her family. So she, like, that perpetuates, right? So I started looking at the incidents, and it looks like this place is actually cursed. So the attorney, that one that colluded originally, was shot to death by an unknown assailant shortly after.
wow.
Okay.
Denise, perhaps?
Then, yeah, the next owner tried to start another ranch, but all the cattle died of an unknown disease before he could get it started, right?
Anthrax.
The next owner after that lost his farm to a giant wildfire, swept through the whole thing and took it out.
Wow.
The next owner after that lost all of his crops to a sudden surge of pests. Pests came through and just took out all of his crops, so he lost it. Yeah. The next owner was the gentleman named Griffith, who started the park just shortly after that. And he suffered extreme damage to the property before it even became the zoo due to a huge flood that washed it all out. Had downed trees, like all the trees were falling over. And then several, after they got that cleaned up, got hit by lightning and they had to do a cleanup all over again. And during the storm where the lightning was knocking down all the trees, his farm hands had reported seeing the silhouette of a gentleman in the distance with his arms raised, hopping up and down. Like they were going to go rescue him, but realized it was too dangerous with all the lightning, so they just left him out there. And they think it was the ghost of Antonio, like celebrating the curse.
Wow.
Right?
Trying to lure him up there to. That's a lot of incidents for that.
So I have a couple
I'm
questions.
not done.
Oh
yeah.
So go ahead, finish up.
Oh,
then I'll ask my
so
question.
after it became the zoo, a wildfire swept through it again, and it killed more than 30 civilian workers.
Holy cow.
Still going, right? So that happens. And then not long after that, a couple visiting the park were killed when a tree suddenly fell on them and crushed them to death.
Oh, crap.
The park has been home to numerous murders and homicide investigations. And recently, a skull was uncovered there during some dirt work that was being done. And it ended up belonging to a woman who looked to be in her 20s, they're guessing, when she passed. And to this day, they still don't know who it
she
is.
Whoa. Yikes.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So,
there you go.
does the city of Los Angeles own this park?
Probably. I don't know if
Okay.
it's
So,
private.
my
I wouldn't
question
think it'd
is,
be privately owned.
my question is, with the curse, is what's wrong with California?
One of.
I mean,
I could name some names, but we're not going to be that kind of show. So
no, I'm just asking. Is this what's happened to California? It's all due to this nasty curse.
It's just a big
go
old
Antonio.
Woo!
Give him his land back.
That's
Oh my
wild.
goodness.
And
Yeah.
they could just find the niece's descendants and deed it back to them.
They're not going to do that.
And just be done with the curse.
Yeah, they're not going to do
Yeah,
that.
they won't.
No,
do
they're
that.
not going to do that. Oh,
No.
yeah, we know you got cheated, but we're not going to give it back.
Nope, for sure.
Sorry. Not our problem.
All right. So here we
that's
go. We're moving from chickens to a geese. It's very foul. No?
Wah,
Okay.
wah.
I tried. This was a short one. I included it because I just thought it was funny. Right? And I couldn't find a whole lot of history on it, but it was pretty hilarious.
Enzo said California's a nice place to leave. He'll be glad to be home tomorrow.
Yay!
Woohoo!
Okay, so the ghost goose of Melsonby, Yorkshire. So this is also in England. So this is just a little short one. So this spectral goose runs incredibly fast along this road to a churchyard and then vanishes through the front gate. But the problem with this goose is that it purposely scares horses that are going by. It'll hop up out of this ditch and scare the bejesus out of your horse, often throwing riders. And then it runs at like breakneck speed. They said it waddles like a goose does, but it does it like triple speed down this dirt road, and then it turns, shoots through the front gates of this churchyard.
Evil.
Dang.
Evil.
I love where the goose is positioned on here. It's over the head of that guy, so it looks like he's got little bitty legs.
Yeah. Now, I did not do this picture. I actually found it like this. I think it was probably somebody else had posted the story, and this is the one that they did with it. So I just snagged it. But I thought it was kind of a funny story. It is. They do say it's well known in this area that you don't take your horses along this road. Because it only seems to pop up at horses. So I don't know what the backstory would be on that. Like maybe it's the ghost of a goose who was killed by a horse and carriage that was going by, and now it haunts that by killing or like trying to kill the horses. I don't know. But I just thought it was funny.
Giant bruises on the backs of my legs from being chased and nipped at by geese. They're absolutely terrifying.
I had to put this up, Mark.
Yes.
Mark said this in the chat. Live geese are terrifying. Ghost geese must be something else.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing worse than geese are freaking swans.
You know, where I used to work, it was at a daycare center, and there was a sidewalk out front that went to the head offices of the place, and there was a geese problem because there was a big pond really close to us, and geese are gross, and they poop big. It's so gross. So gross.
They are gross, and they're mean.
Oh my gosh.
They are mean.
The swans are
swans
evil.
are
They're even worse than geese because they're big enough to really do some damage.
Mm-hmm.
I would put a swan against almost any creature alive. If you had a flock of swans, they could probably take over the world if you train them right.
Stacy,
okay.
If you're recorder watching, this might be familiar.
Yeah, I was gonna say shout out to Cord if he's watching or gets to watch later. So if we were gonna do ghost animals, I most definitely had to add in Morris, who was the famous ghost cat of the Crescent Hotel. in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Now, the picture we have up for those of you who can't see is the lobby, one section of the lobby of the Crescent Hotel. The cat used to sit in one of the chairs here and would greet the guest coming in to the hotel to check in. Like I said, his name was Morris. So this was in the 70s. It's been quite a long time ago. He was an orange tabby cat, quite fluffy and large because he was well loved. He was the unofficial greeter at the Crescent lobby. He would welcome the guests, of course, and beg for pets. That was his thing when he wasn't sleeping the day away. He also loved to roam the rose garden outside and would get scratches out there too. So he had a nice long life. But when he passed, the staff decided to bury him inside of the rose garden where he used to like to hang out. And apparently, he is still there. He still loves to walk around the rose garden. People feel him brush up against their legs. And the same inside, they often feel a cat brushing up against their legs, or they'll actually see him sitting in his favorite chair or going up and down the halls there on that first floor. So kind of fun. He's one of the most famous ghost animals. He's seen a lot. I didn't get to see him when I went.
I didn't see him there either.
But-
But am I wrong, or is that his picture that's hanging on the wall above the sofa there?
It sure is.
Yes,
I
and
thought it was.
by the time frame, he was most likely named after his favorite food.
Yes. Morris the
Probably.
cat.
Yes.
Meow
Mhm.
Mix. Was it Meow Mix?
Something
No.
like that.
I
No.
can't
I don't
remember.
know.
It's been a day.
We've got some. That's what our cats eat.
Yeah.
Um,
Stacy came on and said, Cord's at Grandma's right now. We just looked for Morris a couple of weeks ago, but we did not see him.
Aw.
He's an elusive little critter. Whoops. Sorry.
cats
Hit the wrong
cats
button.
are very well known to come back and haunt you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
They are.
I personally have been haunted by my cat. Even today, occasionally when I am asleep, I will feel our old cat hop up into bed and curl up next to my feet. And I have found myself kicking at the covers because she liked to lick at my toes. And so
There you go.
I will I will feel her get on the bed and head for my feet, and I will kick it before I realize that she's been gone for years.
Oh my goodness.
So
Pam, you've got a personal story like that too.
I do.
You want to tell
Yeah.
it?
So I've got a kitty. If you've listened, you've probably heard me tell the story before where I had a kitty that just absolutely vanished into thin air. And we hear her occasionally in the house. And Jess was here, what, about a month ago, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
And the kitty meowed right behind her, she was sitting at my dining room table, so it would have been in the living room. Actually, it would have been very close to where I'm sitting, is about where she heard her. And
Yep.
it was before my son was home from college, so there was no cat in the house. There's a cat running around here now, but at the time there was not a kitty. So
Yep.
she shows up occasionally. I've seen her go around the corner. I've seen her tail end go around the corner, and makes me sad. But she's still here, so
she still
I
loves
had
you.
one. I have one too, but she's gone now, like gone. I have not heard from her in quite a while. But I used to have a cat named Mau Mouse, who Mark and Pam both knew. She was a
awesome.
character. She unfortunately passed a few years ago of stomach cancer. I lost her very quickly. She went very fast. But one of the things, she loved treats. Like treats were her favorite thing. And the treats that I got her came in a little plastic bag that would crinkle when you opened it up. It would make a very loud crinkle sound. And she would always come running and you could hear her coming. She was a very fat cat and she was very loud when she ran.
She was so cute,
And
though.
after she passed, for a good 6 months afterwards, anytime I would make a crinkle sound of any kind in the kitchen, any kind of a plastic bag or something like that, I could hear her running across my dining room floor to get to the kitchen. So
That's
sad,
awesome.
but also kind of happy because she was still kind of there for me a while. It has not done it. She's not done that in a very, very long time. So, but it was nice for that little while.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
She was so cute. She had been hit by a car, we think, right? When she was little. And so she was missing some teeth, so that her tongue always hung out of her mouth the one side.
Yeah.
And she was missing most of one ear. And she was just cute though. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
She was
Laying on her
raggedy
back
cute.
all the time. Or on the she draped herself over the back of the sofa.
Yep.
She's something else, that's for sure.
All right.
Jennifer says she can feel her cat Jack rub her legs when she's at the bathroom sink sometimes, and he's been gone for 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Aw. All right. Why don't you go ahead and move to the next picture because it's a really fast one, and then I'll pass
Okay.
it over to you. So this is a picture of a little small church and a graveyard just outside of a churchyard, that I should say. So this is the story of the ghost dog of Valcrucius, North Carolina. And this was just a little short one aside, but it's actually very famous in that area. This ghost dog that sits in the cemetery outside of this little church, it guards the whole cemetery at night. It was thought to have belonged to the previous cemetery guard. It actually stalks and runs after late night visitors, and it chases people and their cars to the gate and then disappears.
Nice.
It's so well known that people just don't go to the cemetery after the sun goes down.
Well, that's one way to keep the kids out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just thought it was an
Spectral
interesting one, and I thought it would be nice to note, like right here before we move on, you're going to find a lot of stories of, especially in European countries, of black ghost dogs haunting cemeteries outside of
Yeah.
churchyards.
Yeah.
And it used to be a thing where they would sometimes kill a dog and bury it in the churchyard before they started using it, so it would always have a guardian.
Yes.
It's a
That is
very
true.
old pagan thing that got moved over. So you're going to hear a lot about these black dogs that haunt churchyards over there, solely from this one legend that they held true to. They would do this in these cemeteries. So, not to be mixed with the black hound urban legends,
Yeah.
which we could
Totally
do a
different.
whole show on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll switch back over.
Aw.
There's
Just a happy
cute
dog.
boy.
Yes, this is Bingo the dog, and his owner, his name was Randall Barron Stevens, and he was 9 when he died from leukemia in 1959. And when Randy was Bingo's person, and he was always with him all the time, slept with him in his room and everything. And when Randy was buried, Bingo, he was a lot like the other little dog. He would spend the entire day at his grave, and he would return at night to sleep in Randy's bed. And but he didn't really last very long after Randy passed because he refused to eat, and so it wasn't long before they found him. And he looked like he was asleep on top of Randy's grave. The sexton found him. So the family asked permission if Bingo could be buried next to Randy, and they were refused permission. So they took him home and they buried him under a tree in their backyard. But every single night they would hear scratching at the back door, just like when Bingo, what he did to be let in. And they would hear a dog howling out in the yard that sounded exactly like Bingo. So this happened for like the next night and the next. And finally, the parents were like, you know what? We don't care what they said, basically. So they dug Bingo up and they loaded him in the car. In the middle of the night, they took him to the cemetery, and they were really careful to remove the sod and laid it to the side. And then they buried Bingo right next to Randy. And then they just carefully put the sod back in place so you couldn't really tell unless you were right up on it that what they had done. And they kept that a family secret for years and years and years, before somebody in the family finally fessed up to, yeah, we did this because Bingo had to be with his boy, and that's just how it had to be. And they never heard from him again once they did that. So Bingo was still looking out for him. I thought that was a pretty cool one.
Yeah. Man, you keep
I know that's the last.
making
I
me
know.
cry.
I'm sorry. That's the last boo one. This is one that if you are a watcher of the show or of What If Tomorrow, even on the Fringe, you may have heard of this one. This is the Nada deer that has been spotted around Caney since January of this year, 3 to 4
Did you freeze
times
up?
now,
Oh, you're back.
and by more than one person and in more than one place. I'm sorry, what? Did you say something, Mark?
You were freezing up there. It might be me.
Oh, was I? Oh, okay. It was probably me because I kind of heard you, but I didn't. So this we don't know what it is. So it's bigger than a deer, but it's kind of shaped like a deer, but its snout isn't as long, and its legs are these really long, spindly things. And they don't know what the feet look like, if they actually ended in hooves. We're not really sure. So this was kind of a crude outline of what has been seen. But the reason that we're counting it with tonight's stuff is because not only is it this strange shape and size, it's also translucent. So we know whatever it is, it isn't quite in this realm. We don't know where it's at, but just an interesting one. This is one we're still kind of working on. We're not
And it's
quite
in
sure what it
within
is.
line of sight of some graves.
It is. There's some Indian burial mounds that are very close to where it's been seen, at least in one spot.
Yeah,
And
it's within eyesight of those where
yes,
this drawing was.
yes,
Um,
yeah, within a quarter of a mile of probably less than that.
yeah, you can see them from that spot.
Hmm. You sure can. We went out the next day and checked it out. It's pretty interesting. So this was a kind of a fun one. I found this in a book. And this picture was taken in 1926. And this lady with her Irish wolfhound. And she was thrilled because when the picture was developed, she realized that on the back end of her wolfhound, you can see her smaller dog. She had a little Cairn Terrier, and he had died 6 weeks before this picture was taken. But apparently, he's still with them, at least at this time. The two dogs were inseparable, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And now it's living on his tush.
Yeah, I know. I had to double check. I mean, you can see it immediately, and I did do a kind of blew it up a little bit so you could see it closer.
I mean, you can see that it's not a tail.
No, it's not, because you can see the dog's tail down below.
For those of you who are listening on a podcast, the photo that we're looking at, it looks like this dog's head has just grown out of this other dog's tush. Like right on top, like above where the tail attaches, there's just this little head poking out.
It's
kind of
weird.
Strange.
It is weird.
And I mean, when you blow it up, of course, we're not looking at the negatives, but it really doesn't look like it's been messed with, just to eyeball it. It doesn't look like
it's almost like the dog had an evil twin that it partially took on, and like a little Siamese part, like you've got that weird mole like that has the hair and
Peter's
the teeth
twin
in it.
that grows out of his shoulder.
Yeah,
the extra head. Enzo said, "I told the story of the Nada deer a few times at Contact in the desert." Ooh, we
making us
famous.
That's awesome. Yeah, we can't wait to hear more. Very cool. Let's see. Oh, I added this one in here too. This is really all the information I had on this. This family had just moved to this home, and they took this picture and noticed at the time that there was something weird appearing in the doorway back there. And then later they found out that there used to be an older woman with her English bulldog that lived at that house. And it kind of looks like she's down on the bulldog's level kind of thing, but it looks like they're both peeking out of the door there. It's
weird, and it's an interesting coincidence, if it is a coincidence.
Yeah,
the height, there's a height problem there.
There
The
is.
dog looks bigger than the woman.
Yes.
But I mean, if they're spying on the new family,
Yeah.
and that's not a door, that's a window upstairs, isn't it?
No,
Oh, maybe it
that's a
is.
Is it a
door.
door on the steps? Yes, it is. Okay,
Yeah,
never mind.
there's
Oh, yeah, it says
there's
in the
steps.
doorway.
Crazy.
Who are you people? Why are you at
That
my
was an
house?
interesting one, though. I don't know what the next.
It
Oh,
is.
yeah, this one. Arthur Springer, he was a retired inspector for Scotland Yard. He took this photograph in 1916, and there was not a dog there when he took the photograph, but one sure showed up in the picture later.
Now, looking at
Cool.
this,
It might be a
this
double
could
exposure.
be an accidental double exposure.
Yeah,
It
might
almost looks like one, but you can tell that the dog is not there.
be. Right.
So that could go either way.
Yeah. I'm
Because
iffy on
those
that
old,
one, but I thought it was a cool one.
It is.
I had an old half frame camera that my dad had in Vietnam.
Mhm.
And I got it working to get again because, well, I like to tinker. So I took it apart and cleaned it and put it back together. But I had a real bad problem with the film advancing, and I got a lot of really odd double exposures.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, that one could go either way. It's either absolutely real or absolutely a double exposure.
Yeah. And again, we don't have the
We don't have the negative. We can't
negatives.
tell.
Yeah.
And it's real easy on some of those old cameras. They can be real finky like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's totally accidental.
Yep.
So
I liked this one. The owner had taken the picture because his cat was acting weird and looking off to the side. And when he had the film, when he had it, I lost the word.
Developed.
I had it developed.
Developed. Thank you. Good grief. When he had the film developed, there's another cat that showed up in the picture as well, right where his cat was looking at.
You're forgiven. It's
must have
been a
been seeing
few
a ghost
years
man.
since we developed film. Pam.
Yeah,
it's
I'm
been a
used to
while.
saying that, Emily.
Although you can still get it done. I mean, I still love film cameras. So
Yeah.
and they take the best pictures.
They do.
Now, looking at this picture, this does not look at all like a double exposure.
No, it doesn't.
Because the other cat looks more like a shadow, and the other one looks much more solid. Double exposure gives you that one, like the last one, where it looked super real but super not real.
Yeah,
And
very see-through.
this would be what I expect
Mhm.
for something like this. I have a higher level of confidence on this one
Yeah,
than I did the dog.
I would agree with that. I think that might be. Oh, yep, that was the last one. So we gonna switch back over to Jess.
Yeah. All right, Blue Dog. Here we go. So this one's a fun one. Well, not fun for the dude, but pretty fun anyways. So I ran across this one. I had to add it in because I thought it was just a spectacular story. So this is the Blue Ghost Dog from Port Tobacco, Maryland. What you're seeing on the photo, and for those of you listening, Maryland actually has a sign in honor of this dog. It's got a picture of a blue tick heeler hound. It says Maryland's oldest legend. So sometime in the 1700s, a man named Charles Thomas Sims walked into a local bar there and made 3 big mistakes. So number one, he brought in a ton of gold he had just gotten. Number
That's
two,
never smart.
yeah, he talked too much when he drank. And number 3, he talked too much about the aforementioned gold. Right?
This was
Not
a
good.
really bad night for this gentleman, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Yes, this was a recipe for a disaster. And he threw that sucker in the oven, let me tell you. So Charles found himself in a fight for his life as he was quickly attacked by bandits who had just listened to all of this in the bar.
But of course.
Sims's dog, who was his loyal blue tick hound, is said to have battled right alongside of him, protecting his owner until both of their last breaths. So, although they fought hard, it wasn't enough, and Sims and his dog actually fell on a rock along the road where they were fighting at and perished together, is how the
Oh,
legend
man.
goes. Yeah. So, although the robbers won their gold, they didn't enjoy it for very long. It said that after the bandits returned for their buried treasure, because they had, buried it there so they could come back and get it, a large blue tick hound ran them off, and they all fell ill one by one and perished shortly after.
Oh, wow.
So,
The
like, his
curse.
ghost came back, yeah, and like cursed them. Yeah,
Yeah.
to this day, locals report that the faithful hound is still protecting his master's gold along that little roadway. They see him all the time. And
Wow.
he even has his own sign now.
That's awesome.
That
Yeah.
that one is a fun one. Um, let this be a lesson to you all when you come into large sums of easily transferable largesse. Please do not go to the bar with it.
Yeah. And
Please
don't tell
do
everybody.
not
Yeah.
drink too much, and do not tell everybody, and leave alone.
Yeah. Boasting will get you nothing good.
Enzo
Got
likes that
him.
one. We do
They
too.
got him
Ooh,
sometime.
awesome.
They got him dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Not good. All right. So moving on, we're going to go to another famous one, or at least famous for kind of our area. So we're going to talk about the Limp Mansion ghost dog. Now, Limp Mansion, for anyone who doesn't know, is in St. Louis, Missouri, and is the mansion of the famous Limp family who had the Limp Brewery. It was really big back in the day. You can actually go and stay at the home. It's now a B&B that you go and see, and they do tours all the time, and it's a museum. You can walk through it and everything. So the Limp family had a bad history. They had a history of mental illness in the family. They actually had 4 members commit suicide inside of the home.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, one of the sons, Charles Limp, who you can see here on this picture that we have pulled up here, he was the 4th and the last one to do the deed. And he actually decided to shoot his beloved pet dog, Serva, before he shot himself, because he didn't want Serva to watch, and he didn't want Serva to mourn for his owner. It was all written in his little to-go letter, basically. But Serva, rather than Charles, is now reported to be seen a lot in the mansion, in his office and in his bedroom, but mostly up in all of the bedrooms. She makes trips all the way around. People that stay in the guest rooms often report that they're woken up by a cold nose on their feet under their covers.
Ooh,
Hello, can
Yeah,
I
that's,
call in? I'm
that'd
cold.
be a shock.
yeah. And it's also reported that they could hear the sound of a sorrowful hound dog howling, usually
Aw.
on the anniversary of Charles's death.
Aw,
Yeah. So
I'd
that's
Ooh.
kind of a
stay there
sad
because
one.
Yeah.
I'm used to
It's a sad
ghost
one.
cats. If the dog tried to sniff my foot, I'd probably just pat the bed and say, "Get up here, boy or girl, come on."
Yeah, maybe the next one. Okay, so we've actually talked about this one before when we were doing interesting headstones.
Yes. Yeah.
The headstones
Very
one. But I thought I'd bring this back because this one's like the perfect one for this show. So this is, of course, Rudolph Valentino and his famous dog, Kabar. So Kabar is buried in the Los Angeles Pet Cemetery in Calabasas, California. And he is the famous haunter of this place. So when you walk up to his grave, he will actually nuzzle your hand with his cold, wet nose.
Aw,
Yeah, but he was also famous before this, even when he was alive. So when Valentino died, he died of a bad surgery that he'd had. and this isn't lore, this actually happened, it made the papers. His dog, Kabar, was at home at his apartment, and the minute that he died, he let out a howl so loud that it caused an accident out on the road in front of the apartment. A lady got scared from the howl and drove off the road and hit a post.
Mhm.
That's how well they were connected. So
Aw.
you can actually go and visit his grave, and they claim that you can feel him right there nuzzling at you and moving around your legs, because
So
he
sweet.
just loved people. Yep.
What a
Yeah.
good boy.
We're going to keep going with yours, Jess.
Okay. All right. Tomcat. This is at Fort McAllister in Savannah, Georgia. I thought this one was kind of interesting too. I'd never heard of this one, which is odd because I've heard of most of these ones that are related to the military stuff. So, a brave cat who lived with the Confederate soldiers and was killed during a fierce battle. His name was Tom Cat. That's what they called him, Tom Cat. And apparently he was just super brave. He would go right out into the battle with them, and unfortunately he met his end one day. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they actually put this plaque up for him. He was so special to them.
That's
I just
awesome.
thought it was an interesting one. Yeah. He still roams the area, apparently. They see him as often as they, see other ghosts in the area. It's a highly haunted area, but apparently he still goes out in the battle.
Still hanging out with his buddies, isn't he?
Yeah. All right. Okay. This one is sad, and I don't even know what to think of this one. And I couldn't find a backstory on it. So this is York Minster Cathedral in Deangate, York, in the UK. So this story is called The Barking Wall. Right? The Barking Wall. For unknown reasons, a man's dog was walled up within the cathedral during some construction work that was being done and suffocated and died.
Oh my gosh.
Now, I can't imagine that this wasn't done on purpose, because
Yeah.
you could
somebody
hear
did
a
it.
dog, right?
Mhm.
But apparently now it haunts the cathedral, and the ghostly barking is often heard echoing from that wall.
Oh,
And it
man.
happens at inopportune times, like when services are going on.
Well, that's when all the people are there.
Yeah. But I couldn't find the backstory on why that would have happened. I could not find anything on that. So I just
That's
thought that one was like a spooky,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know.
Mm.
All right, let's make this the last one before we move to the notebook game. We
Okay.
will be doing probably a part 2 and probably a part 3, so we can get all the way
That's a
to
lot.
yeah. So we can get all the way through, like the flip side of this. Why do animals sense ghosts before we do?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one I thought it was a little weird, a little endearing. I'm not sure. I will let you be the judge. So this one's called the Glasgow Dogs, and this is in the Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond, Virginia. And the dogs you're looking at on the screen, and for you at home, there's 2 little white dogs up here. Their names are Billy and Powell.
No.
So, yes, the lady in the bouffante hat and the crazy furs.
Enzo said she turned the dogs into a scarf and a hat. Kind of looks
Oh,
like it.
dear Lord, no. There's no Cruella de Vil here. Thank you. So, this is author Ellen Glasgow. She was a popular author in that area there. And when she died, it was stipulated in her will that her previous 2 pet dogs, Billy and Pal, who had long since died, had to be dug up from her back garden behind her home and reinterred with her in the cemetery. Right? I didn't post the pictures here. I later on did find pictures. They got their own little headstones too. I didn't add them in, right?
That's sweet.
But Yeah. But the thing is now is that these two little dogs are running havoc at the cemetery. They apparently sit at her stone all the time, but when they're not doing that, they're running up and down the rows and chasing cars
Awesome.
and
Doing dog things.
creating
Doing dog
havoc.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're dogs.
They look
Yes.
ornery.
So Billy and Pal, and they're famous for their shenanigans and for the
The little
story of
short
them
one's the
being
instigator too. Look at him. He looks.
yeah.
Yeah, you're like, what can we get
Yeah.
into?
Yes.
So yeah,
What are
they're
we doing
famous for their
tonight,
shenanigans.
pal? The same thing we do every night, Billy. We try to take over the cemetery.
Oh my goodness. All right. So
Shoot.
we will continue because I have a number of more stories, and we'll probably get into the flip side of that too in the next one. We'll see how that runs.
We may
So,
be
but
able
we
to
knew
time
that
it up, but I
we
don't know,
knew that this was going to be a multiple part.
for sure.
Because I mean, we could have, like, if we'd had another week, we could have just sat there and pulled stories and pulled
Oh my
stories
gosh.
and pulled
There's
Yeah,
stories.
so many.
I only had to work 2 hours, and I found more stuff than I could talk about.
There's so many, and it's fascinating. Just the fact there's so many is fascinating on its own because it's, for so many to come back and to make themselves known is interesting on its own.
Yeah. All right. Notebook game time. Is there
Woohoo.
anybody who wants to play? So, for those who may not know what the notebook game is, I have incredibly overdone notebooks full of multiple subjects, and I have grabbed 5 of them.
She is the
And you
notebook
get to
queen.
choose. Yes. So what you're going to do is you're going to choose notebook 1 through 5, pick one of those, and then a page number 65 or less. And I will go to that page and read whatever is on it. And you guys get to hear the insanity. All
First
right.
one up,
So what's the
notebook 4, page 28.
Okay.
It's Ginger. Hi, Ginger.
All right. 28. Ooh. Okay. Let's see here. This is on this is when we were doing ghost ships and stuff a number of years back
nice.
for
Yes, this has been a while.
yeah. So this is on the ghost ship SS Orang Medan. So I'll read this one's an interesting one if I remember correctly. So this happened June 1947. 2 American ships named Silver Star and City of Baltimore were sailing the Strait of Malacca when they heard the distress call from the Dutch merchant ship Orang Medan. It was in Morse code and said, SOS from Orang Medan, and then an unintelligible part. We float. All officers, including the captain, dead in chart room and on the bridge. Probably whole of crew dead. And then another unintelligible part. I'm dying. That was the only transmission that they received. When the boats located the ship, sailors from the Silver Star boarded the ship, which appeared completely undamaged. What they found were dead bodies, including a dog. They were sprawled on their backs, the frozen faces upturned to the sun, with mouths gaping opened and eyes staring. The dead bodies resembled horrible caricatures. And that was a quote from the Proceedings of the Merchant Marine Council, U.S. Coast Guard, May 1952. There were no survivors and no signs of injury to the bodies. While the rescuers were on board, a fire broke out in one of the cargo holds, forcing them to evacuate. After returning to their own ship, the Orang Medan exploded and sank within minutes. The strangest part may be that there was no evidence that the Orang Medan ever existed. The name doesn't show up on any records, no construction records, no fleet registries, no freight logs, no insurance documents. No Dutch boat or sailors from that time and place were ever reported missing.
Something slipped through from another universe, man.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah. One of the many crazy ship stories I have.
There's a lot of weird ship stories out there.
Yeah.
That was a good one. Okay,
All
the next
right.
one is Chris with book 5, page 5.
Okay. Oh my lord. It's heavy. Wow. Oh,
That's wild. It is.
so page 5, or that page is from Slips in Time and Space, Rosemary Ellen Guiley.
Oh, I love her.
Oh, nice.
And
Nice. That's a good
it's
book.
on the Hesperides.
Nice.
Is this page. Okay, so the Hesperide Islands, I'll just read what's here. So, disappearing, reappearing archipelago in the Pacific Ocean. The islands have been included in maps over the years, but always disappears. A pamphlet written about the islands exists and even names the islands with a mixture of English, Spanish, and Polynesian names. Among the known documentation is a drafted constitution written in Esperanto and 3 postage stamps commemorating freedom of religion, space travel, and the rights of mankind in denominations of 50 and 75 unknown monetary units. So the Hesperides is a set of islands that we found that pop up and then disappear consistently throughout the years and have been for as long as maps have been available. We were actually looking into land masses and stuff that pop in and out when we found this. And oddly enough, we only found this one little thing about it. We found like some smatterings of information here and there on the web. And then later on, when we did the story with the guys on the Annals of Kentucky, we were both reading. We were all reading that book, and the Hesperides popped up in it just as a little side note. Like the guy who was
like everybody knew it was there.
I missed it.
Yeah, just
completely
mentioned it, and I was like, "There it is." So yeah, this island pops in and out, and it's mentioned in like captain's logs from ships and stuff. They're like, well, the Hesperides were here today, so we decided to pop in and get some food.
They're not always there.
Yeah, but they always say that. Well, they're here today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or we were planning to stop at the Hesperides, but they were not there today, so we didn't.
So
even then,
everybody apparently knew about them and that they weren't always there.
Which is crazy.
No, it's like what is it? St. Brendan's Island?
St. Brendan's, I think is.
Yeah, that's what's next on the page. So the next one is St. Brendan's Island, first reported in the 1500s in the area of the Canary Islands. It's named after a medieval Irish monk who landed there and wrote about it. It is often referred to as the 8th Canary Island. Ancient cartographers such as Ptolemy wrote about an 8th Canary Island called Aprostus, which was inaccessible. There are many witnesses who have seen the island and even landed there. So another island that pops in and out.
Interesting thing about that is if you look at, I believe it's aerial photos, there is a undersea landmass that is visible from the air in the approximate shape of the islands as the island as it's drawn on maps.
That's cool.
So it's like it's flipping in and out between realities, where in one reality it's above sea level and in the next it's below.
Yep.
So. Yep. All right. So Enzo's got one, it looks like.
Did we do this one already? Did we do Stacy's? No.
Yeah, I think that was the one we just did, wasn't it?
We didn't do 5. One of them was book 5, page 5, and then we have book 5, page 20.
Oh, okay. Wrong one. I'll do Stacy's first.
She'll haunt you.
Okay, what is it? Book 5.
Book 5, page 20.
3, 4, 5. 20. Okay. Oh, this is on the Belmez faces.
On the what?
The Belmez faces,
Oh,
the famous
okay.
faces that pop up in the floor.
Yeah.
So, this is in Spain, Belmez, Spain, for those of you who don't know where that is. So on August 23rd, 1971, Maria Gomez Camara noticed a stain on her kitchen concrete floor. She tried to scrub it clean over the next couple of days, but to no avail. It slowly took on the appearance of a face and scared her so badly that her husband Juan and her son Miguel took a pickaxe to the floor, destroyed the stained area, and patched it in with fresh concrete. A week later, the same face appeared again in the new concrete. To figure out what was going on, they opted to have the floor excavated. After a long dig, they uncovered numerous decapitated skeletons directly under the mystery face stain. On further examination, it was discovered that they dated back to the 13th century. No one knew who they could belong to, as there were no records of any burials there. They laid the remains to rest in the local cemetery and relaid new concrete, hoping that was the end of it. It was only the beginning, however. More faces began appearing and continued through Maria's life, who passed in 2004 at the age of 85. People who believed the faces were a hoax and fabricated by Maria were proven wrong when the faces continued to appear and change even after her death. They are still appearing today. To date, there have been hundreds of unique faces photographed and recorded and can be seen by the public.
It's pretty wild.
That
Yeah,
is
they're
weird.
still popping up.
Yes. Pretty crazy. Okay.
Yep.
Enzo, notebook 1, page 4.
Okay, that was that one.
And he said on that last one, no freaking way. Yeah, that is one of the creepier things. That'd be a good one to dive into, is because I know
Yeah,
that's
good.
happened in more than one spot. So that would be a fun one to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I've got this all messed up here. Okay. Which one was it?
Notebook 1, page 4.
Oh, okay. This we can do. 1, 2. Okay.
Ah, he spotted it, Mark. We wondered if you would.
I was inspired by my close friend and fashion expert, Enzo Cyril.
There we go.
Yay.
All right. So we're on a good run tonight. This is an interesting one too. I was actually saving this one. It's one of the mini ones that I've picked up. They're like little mini stories because I thought we would do like a Believe It or Not one again sometime. But this one will be good. So I haven't actually read this one before on any one of the shows. So this one's on the Devil's Footprints from the ex-estuary in East and South Devon, England. This happened back in, it was actually February 8th through 9th in 1855. So this one is one of those crazy stories, but it's so well documented, it's not a newspaper farce. After a heavy snowfall, trails of hoof marks appeared overnight in the snow, covering a total distance of around 100 miles. The prints continued on for 2 more nights. So for every night, this trail of prints continued to travel over the land. The prints measured 4-inch long, 3 inches across, between 8 and 16 inches apart, and mostly in single file, starting around Devon through Dorset. The straight line of tracks were uninterrupted the entire way. Houses, rivers, haystacks, and other obstacles were traveled straight over.
That's pretty crazy.
That's
right.
Freaky.
Prints traveled over snowy roofs and even high walls, including leading up to and exiting drain pipes as small as 4 inches in diameter. as if it had shrunk in size to travel through. So,
That's weird.
yeah, I found a newspaper clipping, and this came from, it was actually a little like, it was a weekly dispatch called Bell's Life in Sydney. This one was put out 18th of February, 1855. It appears on Thursday last night, there was a very heavy snowfall in the neighborhood of Exeter and south of Devon. On the following morning, the inhabitants of the above towns were surprised at discovering the footmarks of some strange and mysterious animal endowed with the power of ubiquity. As the footprints were to be seen in all kinds of unaccountable places, on the tops of houses and narrow walls, in gardens and courtyards, enclosed by high walls, and palings, as well as open fields. So I also put in notes down below. I did a little bit more research on it and found out it actually extended further than the original stated area. The prints extended from Exmouth to Topsham, across to Estuary and Dowlish and Teignmouth and Totnew and Torquay, Weymouth and Lincolnshire. So it actually like came up and came over and then went back up again. So it was more than 100 miles, basically. So a single set of prints that were shaped like hooves traveled in a straight line and never broke gate, and literally just went over stuff, like even high. Isn't that crazy?
It reminds me of like the trooping fairies, except there's just one instead of a whole group of them.
Or Spider Pig.
Yeah. So I went and looked. So besides all this documentation from these newspapers and stuff, I also found a 1950 document asking for more information by the Devonshire Association. They took files on it. And in 1850, a collection of papers belonging to Reverend H.T. Ellicombe, the victor of Kleist St. George, had papers. These papers included letters addressed to the vicar from his friends, among them the Reverend G.M. Musgrove, the vicar of Withcombe Raleigh. The draft of a letter to the Illustrated London News marked "not for publication," and several tracings of hoofprints that went along with it. So literally, like the minister of one of these towns, like gathered all the information and sent it in too, but was like, "Don't talk about it. Here's all the information, but I don't want you to say anything."
We don't want to let people actually know this is happening.
Yeah. And I did find, and I need to do some more research on it because I couldn't find a whole lot yet. There was something similar that happened in Scotland too, where they saw a single line of prints that just went all over the place. But I couldn't find a whole lot on it yet. So I'm still working on it.
Interesting.
Yep.
That was a good one.
Yay. We had some good ones. All right.
It was a fun one.
Are we done?
We are coming to the end.
We are.
To be continued on, let's see, our next show is June 19th. Wednesday, June
19th. Yeah.
And don't forget,
join us
if you're around Katy, that Bordertown Presents is this Friday night at 7 at the Katy City Library. So we're back in session.
Yep, 7 p.m. We're going to talk about the Garnet Hotel and all the hauntings that happen there. It's going to be fun and crazy. And next Monday, we're going to do the second part with Mark and Phil on harmonics. So that should be cool.
On Fringe.
Yep, we're going to be talking about the stuff we suspect the ancients were capable of.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. So let's end it out here. So thanks to everyone for hanging out with us here. And a big thank you to Mark for joining us. And he will be back. We're going to force him to, whether he likes it or not.
I mean, I will do anything you guys ask me within reason.
Aw,
that's nice.
He's learned us well enough to tack on the within reason. Did you notice that?
Exactly. We'll see, sir. We'll see.
I mean, I guess I would help you bury a body. I don't know.
You will. It'll happen. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
All right. So remember
Probably
to
mine.
like, share, and subscribe and hit that bell and find us on social media. You can find a listing of our show notes, resources, and references on our website, www.bordertownparanormal.com. Under the Bordertown Strange button, you'll find at the top. Catch a new show every other Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central on YouTube, Facebook, and available wherever you listen to podcasts. Please remember to send in your show ideas and personal stories. We'll read them on the show. So keep it weird, keep it strange, and remember, it's all connected.
Yay.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night.